Hello. My fiancée told me, just weeks before our wedding, that she wanted to sort out her feelings for her male best friend. So I let her figure it out, while I canceled the deposits, packed her things, and removed her from my life. My name is Jimmy, I am 31, and I work as a procurement analyst for a hospital network in Manchester. My job is mostly spreadsheets, supplier calls, and people panicking at me because something important did not arrive when it was supposed to. I keep a steady routine, I leave early, I cook most nights, and until about 3 weeks ago my life was boring in a way I actually liked. My fiancée is Laura, 29. We had been together a little over 4 years and engaged for 9 months. We were living in my flat because I bought it before we met, but by the time this happened it felt like our place in every practical sense. Most of the wedding had already been paid for in chunks, invitations were out, her dress was fitted, and our families had crossed into that annoying phase where every conversation somehow came back to centerpieces, seating plans, and whether the photographer needed a meal. Laura had a strong personality, even on her best days. Her friends called her direct. I called her difficult when she was not around. She had a habit of treating every disagreement like a competition she had to win. If a waiter got something wrong, she made it into a courtroom speech. If a friend canceled dinner, Laura would act like she had been personally betrayed. I had seen that side of her plenty, but I honestly thought I knew the size and shape of it by then. Her best friend, Steven, had been a background feature of our relationship almost from the start. He was one of those men who somehow managed to be constantly present while pretending not to be. He texted her all the time, called late, inserted himself into plans, and always had some crisis or emotional fog that only Laura seemed qualified to handle. I did not like it, but I also did not want to be the insecure fiancé policing a friendship that technically predated me. The real problem started on a Thursday night, when she came home unusually calm. Not guilty calm, prepared calm. She sat across from me at the kitchen table while I was halfway through sorting final vendor emails for the wedding. Then she told me she had been feeling confused, that getting married was making things feel very real, and that before we went through with it, she needed to sort out her feelings for Steven. She said it like she was asking for an extension on a deadline. I remember staring at her because I genuinely thought there had to be a second half to that sentence where she explained she had already chosen me and just wanted to be honest. Instead, she kept talking. She said she owed it to herself to explore what was there, if anything, because she did not want regrets. Then she added the part that really changed everything. She expected me to be mature about it because this was not cheating, it was emotional honesty. That was the moment I stopped thinking about saving the wedding and started thinking about logistics. What made the whole thing strange was how reasonable Laura seemed while saying it. She was not yelling. She was not defensive. She was speaking like someone explaining a scheduling conflict. She said she had always had a complicated connection with Steven. According to her, the timing had just never lined up when they were younger. He had been dating someone when she was single. Then she was with me when he became available. She said getting this close to the wedding forced her to confront the idea that she might be locking herself into a life while still wondering what that other path looked like. She said it very calmly, almost academically. I asked her one simple question. I asked what exactly sorting out her feelings meant in practice. That is where the conversation went from confusing to insulting. Laura leaned back in her chair like this was a negotiation. She said she needed a little space to spend time with Steven and figure out if there was something real there, or if it was just emotional history. She said if it turned out to be nothing, we could move forward with the wedding with complete honesty between us. She genuinely thought this was a mature solution. I asked her if she realized what she was actually proposing. She waved that off almost immediately. She said I was being dramatic and framing it the wrong way. According to her, she was being responsible by addressing the doubt before the marriage instead of burying it and letting it turn into resentment later. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said if our relationship was as strong as I believed it was, then a few weeks of her figuring things out should not threaten it. That was when I stopped talking. The thing people need to understand about Laura is that she had always been very good at reframing situations, so she came out looking thoughtful instead of selfish. In her mind, she was not asking her fiancé to sit patiently while she emotionally drove another man weeks before the wedding. She was simply doing personal growth. Meanwhile, I was sitting there looking at a spreadsheet on my laptop with the payment schedule for our venue, the caterer, the photographer, and about 12 other vendors who all expected final confirmations within the next 2 weeks. I remember thinking something very simple. If she needs time to figure out whether she wants Steven, then the wedding already has its answer. I did not say that out loud yet, though. Instead, I told her I understood. I told her she should absolutely take the time she needed to sort out her feelings. Laura looked visibly relieved. She thought I was agreeing to wait. Laura seemed satisfied after that conversation. She stood up from the table, grabbed her phone, and said she was going to take a shower because the whole discussion had apparently been emotionally exhausting for her. Meanwhile, I stayed in the kitchen staring at the vendor spreadsheet. I am not a dramatic person. I do not shout when I am angry, and I do not make big emotional speeches. My brain tends to switch straight into problem-solving mode when something breaks. That is exactly what happened that night. Laura said she needed time to figure out whether she wanted a future with Steven. That meant one simple thing to me. The wedding was already over. So instead of arguing, I opened a new tab and started going through the contracts one by one. Venue first, then catering, then the photographer. A few deposits were non-refundable, which I expected. Others could still be partially recovered if canceled early enough. I sent 3 emails before Laura even came out of the shower. After that, I closed the laptop and went into the bedroom. Our flat is not very big. 1 bedroom, small living room, compact kitchen. Most of Lara's clothes were in the wardrobe on the right side of the room, with a second rack she had insisted on buying because apparently my original storage setup was unacceptable for someone planning a wedding. I grabbed 2 empty suitcases from the closet. Then I started packing her things. Not angrily, not violently, just methodically. Dresses first, then sweaters, then the piles of workout clothes she rarely actually used. I folded everything the same way I always did when we traveled. Neat stacks, nothing thrown or wrinkled. About 20 minutes later, Laura walked into the bedroom wearing pajamas and drying her hair with a towel. She stopped in the doorway. The first suitcase was already half full on the bed. She looked at me, confused, like she had walked into the wrong apartment. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse her of anything. I just kept folding one of her jackets and placing it into the suitcase. Finally, she asked what I was doing. I told her the truth. I said, "You told me you need time to explore your feelings for Steven. That sounds like something a single person should probably do. So I am helping you get started." For a few seconds, she just stared at me. Then her expression shifted from confusion to irritation. Because in Lara's mind, this was not how the plan was supposed to work. Laura crossed her arms almost immediately. She asked me why I was being dramatic. That was the exact word she used. Dramatic. I kept folding her clothes while she talked. Another sweater, then a pair of jeans. Into the suitcase. She said that was not what she meant, and I knew it. According to her, the plan was simply for her to spend some time with Steven and sort through her emotions. She said adults should be able to handle complicated feelings without blowing up their entire lives. I told her I agreed with that. Then I zipped the first suitcase closed and pulled the second one onto the bed. That is when she started getting irritated. Laura asked if I was seriously packing her things right now. I said yes. She asked where exactly I expected her to go. I told her that part was not really my decision. She could stay with Steven. She could stay with a friend. She could stay with her sister. The important part was that if she needed the freedom to explore another relationship, she should probably not be living with the man she was supposed to marry in a few weeks. She rolled her eyes like I was missing the point on purpose. Then she said something that honestly explained a lot about how she had been viewing the situation. She said I was supposed to trust her. According to Laura, sorting out her feelings did not mean she was choosing Steven over me. It just meant she needed the opportunity to see whether there was something there before committing fully to our marriage. She said I should be confident enough in our relationship to handle that. That was the moment I stopped packing and looked at her. I told her that trust does not mean accepting humiliation. If someone needs to evaluate another option before marrying you, the decision is already made whether they admit it or not. She tried to interrupt, but I kept speaking calmly. I said she was absolutely free to explore her feelings for Steven. I was not going to argue with her about that. But she was going to do it as a single woman, not as my fiancée living in my home while the wedding vendors waited for final payments. Then I finished packing the second suitcase. I walked into the hallway, grabbed the 2 bags, her laptop bag, and the small box where she kept random personal things. I placed everything by the front door and opened it. Laura stood there staring at me like she was still waiting for me to back down. I told her she should probably call Steven. Then I stepped aside and told her it was time to go. Laura did not move at first. She stood in the hallway looking at the bags like they were some kind of temporary display. Like this was still part of the argument phase, and eventually I would cool down and put everything back in the wardrobe. Then she started talking again. She said I was overreacting. She said I was being insecure. She said this was exactly why people avoided honest conversations in relationships, because partners like me could not handle emotional complexity. I listened to the first 30 seconds of that while standing near the door. Then I calmly told her the conversation was already finished. Laura kept pushing, though. She said I was punishing her for being honest. She said I was trying to manipulate her into choosing quickly. According to her, a mature partner would support her while she figured out her feelings instead of turning the situation into some kind of ultimatum. I told her there was no ultimatum. She already made the decision the moment she said she needed to explore another man before marrying me. I simply adjusted my plans based on that information. That is when the irritation on her face turned into something closer to anger. She said I was unbelievable. She said most people would at least try to fight for their relationship. Apparently, my refusal to beg her to stay was proof that I never loved her the way she thought I did. That part almost made me laugh, but I kept my voice calm. I told her she was absolutely free to figure out whatever she needed with Steven. I was not stopping her. I was just removing myself from the situation entirely. Then I pointed to the suitcases by the door. For a few seconds, she just stared at them. The reality of it seemed to finally land. Without saying another word, she grabbed her laptop bag first, then one of the suitcases. She dragged it toward the hallway with an irritated pull that made the wheels bounce over the door frame. She turned back once and asked if I was seriously ending everything like this. I told her yes. She rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath about me being dramatic, grabbed the second suitcase, and walked out of the apartment. The door closed behind her a few seconds later. Just like that, the flat was completely quiet. The first thing I did after Laura walked out was sit down on the couch and open my phone. Not to text her. Not to argue. Not to wait for some emotional follow-up message where she tried to renegotiate the situation. I blocked her. Phone first. Then WhatsApp. Then Instagram. Then Facebook. Every place where a message could appear and start another round of pointless discussion. It was not an emotional decision. It was preventative maintenance. Laura had a habit of talking in circles until people got tired enough to give in. I had watched her do it with friends, co-workers, even her own sister. Once she believed she was entitled to something, the conversation never actually ended until the other person gave up. I had no interest in participating in that process. After that, I opened my laptop again and went back to the vendor list. The venue manager replied first. I explained the wedding was canceled due to a personal situation and asked what part of the deposit could be recovered. The answer was not great, but it was predictable. Some money gone, some partially refundable if the date could be rebooked. The caterer was easier. Same with the florist. I worked through the list for about an hour. The strange thing was how calm everything felt. No shouting, no dramatic breakup speech. Just emails, cancellation forms, and a quiet apartment that suddenly had half the closet space available again. At some point, I noticed something else. My phone was completely silent. That was unusual because Laura normally sent messages constantly throughout the day. Even when we were both at work, she would send updates about random things that annoyed her. Coworker problems, traffic complaints, screenshots of arguments happening in her group chats. Now there was nothing. Of course, I had already blocked her everywhere, so even if she had tried to message me, I would not see it. But I realized something important. If Laura had actually expected me to wait patiently while she explored her feelings for Steven, she probably also expected to come back later and continue the relationship like nothing had happened. Blocking her removed that option entirely, which meant that sooner or later she was going to realize I was not playing along with the version of events she had planned in her head. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Part of that was habit from work, but part of it was the strange quiet in the apartment. Laura used to start moving around early, usually complaining about something before she even finished her first coffee. A neighbor making noise, emails from work, some argument happening in one of her group chats. Now the place was silent. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop again. There were already 2 replies from vendors confirming the cancellations. One asked if I wanted to move the deposit toward a future event. I declined that option immediately. There would not be a future event. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I did not recognize. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, the same number called again. Then a third time. That was when I realized what was probably happening. Laura could not reach me directly anymore, so she was trying from someone else's phone. I declined the call again and blocked the number. About 5 minutes later, another unknown number appeared. Blocked that one too. Laura had always been persistent when she wanted a conversation to continue. If anything, blocking her main accounts probably just made her more determined to get a reaction. By the time I left for work, I had blocked 3 different numbers. At lunch, I checked my email and saw something new. Not from Laura. From Steven. The subject line simply said we should talk. I almost laughed when I saw it. Apparently, Laura had already updated him on the situation. Either that or he had been involved in the background longer than I realized. Both options were possible. I opened the email. It was surprisingly polite. Steven said he thought there had been a misunderstanding and that Laura was extremely upset about how things had escalated. He wrote that the situation between him and Laura was complicated but not what it looked like. Then he suggested the 3 of us meet to clear the air like adults. I read the message twice. Then I closed the email without replying. Because from my perspective, there was nothing left to clear up. I did not reply to Steven's email. There was no version of that meeting that would accomplish anything useful for me. From my perspective, the situation had already resolved itself the moment Laura decided she needed to test her feelings for another man weeks before our wedding. Still, the attempts to reach me did not stop. That evening, another email arrived. This time it was from Lara's sister, Emily. Her message was much shorter. She wrote that Laura was staying with her and that things had gotten out of control very quickly. According to Emily, Laura was convinced I had completely overreacted and destroyed the relationship instead of having a real conversation. Emily said Laura wanted to meet and talk things through. I read that message twice as well. What stood out to me was not the request to talk. It was the way Laura was describing the situation to other people. Apparently, in her version of events, she had simply tried to be emotionally honest about some complicated feelings, and I had immediately exploded, thrown her out, and canceled the entire wedding in a fit of insecurity. The part where she asked her fiancé for permission to explore another man before the wedding seemed to be missing from that summary. I did not reply to Emily either. Instead, I finished eating dinner and started going through the apartment room by room. Not because I was angry, mostly because the place suddenly felt half empty and slightly disorganized after everything from Lara's side of the closet and bathroom disappeared. There were still small things left behind. A hairbrush in the bathroom drawer. A pair of shoes by the door she must have forgotten in the rush. Some random cosmetics in the cabinet under the sink. I gathered everything into a small box and placed it near the entrance. If she wanted those things back, she could arrange a time to collect them through Emily or someone else. I was not interested in another direct conversation. Around 10 that night, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time I answered, mostly out of curiosity. For a second there was silence. Then Lara's voice came through the line. She sounded irritated more than anything else. The first thing she said was that blocking her everywhere was childish. The second thing she said was that we needed to talk because things had gotten completely out of hand. For a second I did not say anything. Then I asked her how many phones she planned to borrow before realizing the situation had not changed. Lara immediately sounded annoyed. She said that attitude right there was exactly the problem. According to her, I had taken a normal conversation about complicated feelings and turned it into a nuclear-level reaction. She said I humiliated her by throwing her out of the apartment like she was some kind of criminal. I told her she asked for the freedom to explore another relationship. I simply made the logistics match the request. That made her even more irritated. Lara said I was twisting her words. She claimed she never said she wanted to start a relationship with Steven. She just needed time to understand what she felt. Apparently, in her mind, that distinction made everything completely reasonable. Then she said something that honestly explained why she was calling. Steven had told her about the email he sent me. She said the 3 of us sitting down and talking like adults would clear up the misunderstanding and calm everything down. According to her, once I realized nothing inappropriate had actually happened between her and Steven, I would see that canceling the wedding was a massive overreaction. I told her something very simple. If someone needs to evaluate another man before marrying me, then the engagement is already finished. There is no version of that situation where the wedding continues as planned. She started talking over me immediately after that, saying I was being stubborn and that I was refusing to even try to fix things. I did not respond. I hung up. Then I blocked that number too. After that call, the situation finally went quiet. No more unknown numbers. No more emails. No more messages through other people trying to set up a conversation. Either Lara realized I was not going to keep participating in the discussion, or she ran out of phones to borrow. The next few days were mostly administrative. I finished canceling the last of the wedding arrangements. The venue confirmed the date had already been relisted, which meant I would recover a small part of the deposit. The photographer kept the booking fee, which was fair according to the contract. The caterer refunded more than I expected. It was not cheap, but it was manageable. The stranger part was telling people. My parents took the news calmly. My mother asked the obvious question about what happened, so I explained it in very simple terms. Laura wanted to explore feelings for another man before the wedding. I chose not to participate in that situation. That explanation seemed to be enough. Some mutual friends reached out over the next week. A few had clearly heard Lara's version first, which framed the situation as me abruptly ending everything after one difficult conversation. Whenever someone asked, I told them the same thing I told my parents. If your partner needs to test drive another relationship before marrying you, the answer is already there. Most people understood immediately. About 2 weeks later, Emily came by the apartment to collect the last small box of Lara's things. We spoke for maybe 3 minutes in the hallway. She did not argue or defend her sister. She just said the situation had become very messy on their side. Apparently things between Laura and Stephen were already complicated. That did not surprise me. After she left, I closed the door and went back inside. The apartment felt different now. Quieter. Simpler. Not empty exactly, just stable again. Sometimes people ask if I regret not trying harder to fix things. The honest answer is no. Laura said she needed time to figure out whether another man might be the better choice. I simply made sure she had all the time in the world to do that. Just not as my fiancé.